Why is it important that you guys came out today? Why do you think holding these kind of press conferences, reacting to statements from Mayor Battle, statements from Mark McMurray? Why do you think it's important just to come out here and make your voices heard?
Well, for me, I've received so many different emails and calls asking about this while I was in Montgomery last week and asking about this situation. And I had not read up on it because we were in the throes of the legislative session. And so when I read the statements, I said that, there must have been, must have been taken out of context. There's no way that we would undermine our justice system because, the very individuals that's supposed to enforce the laws are now questioning our justice system and saying that they got it wrong, and that really concerns me. It also puts, our judicial system and our prosecutors and our city at odds, and that's not something that we need as a community. And then as we're trying to promote growth and opportunity in our community, when you Google Huntsville, is that what you want to see? Is that Huntsville didn't make the right decision? A smart city, not making smart decisions when it comes to when there's a need to make changes in leadership. I applaud Chief McMurray for the service that he shown our community up until this point. But I just think that this really, I think that internally, you'll see, even at the police department, we shouldn't put our men and women in uniform at odds with the community, and we shouldn't be doubling down no matter, and not recognize the verdict, that actually the conviction that happened. And so I think that we're putting our men and women in uniform at risk as well. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that and what type of culture is creating in our community. And I just think that, while in other places things have happened across the country, I never, in our community, you never think about your community. And I think now, it's time for us to say, okay, where we want to go, and how does this impact our community? How does it impact us long term, economically, and how do we are fighting an image problem as a state. But as a community, we've always prided ourselves on being a very smart city, an inclusive city. But we cannot let isolated issues like this, impact our long-term growth and success.
With that, why do you think it's important to focus on mental health police, how our law
And
enforcement?
we're doing more in the legislature. Thank for Representative Majority Leader Ledbetter has been leading the effort in the House for mental health. And so he's been, every year, last couple of years, we've been focusing on putting more investments in mental health. I do think that we got to put more resources with our law enforcement to help some of our officers get more in-depth training in mental health. But also, we got to make certain that the salaries are appealing. A police officer, an officer that's protecting and serving us, they're putting their lives on the line each and every day, shouldn't have to get a second job in order to make ends meet. And so we have as a state, we have to do a better job of making certain that we're making investments, and then we're focusing on the preventative side. How do we bridge the gap between community and law enforcement? This is just an unfortunate situation to where, this is not, but when I'm receiving all these calls from constituents, and whenever I go out, went out to eat the last couple of days in the community, and folks are person after person. And so, as a leader, you got to step up, even in times where it may be very difficult. And this is just an unusual circumstance for me. I typically focus my attention on growth and really promoting the community in the state as well. And so having to deal with this, but I'm going to deal with issues that are distractions that are impacting our community, right? And so in friends, I'm really close friends with the mayor. I mean, I think the world of him. I think that there's no one in this state that have done more for a city than Mayor Battle. But I was happy to see him amend his statements. I think that takes courage and that takes leadership. But I've yet to hear anything from the chief. And in fact, as Mr. Persons mentioned, I've been disappointed since the June 3rd situation, and then we're now reliving another incident to where we just got to do better, and we got to understand where we are as a community and how this impacts our community. I want our community to be inclusive. I think that there are some wonderful officers on our police force. I think that hands down, there's no one that provides the quality of training that Dwayne McCarter provides, and I think that we may disagree on certain things, but he's always been someone that I think is doing a heck of a job with the training program, but it starts at the top, the very top, and so we gotta support guys like him. And I don't want anyone to paint a broad brush of all police officers because of but they do. The leadership kind of sets the tone. And so we just got to make certain that we set a different tone that's more inclusive and that's more inclusive of all, but still protecting and protecting and upholding the law at the same time. And so there is a balance that can be struck.
Thank you for that answer. That was perfect. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this or want the community
Well,
to
I
have?
think that as a community, we're going to have to move forward in healing. And I don't, for me, I like to see our law enforcement and our community work together more. But I also don't want to see our law enforcement put in harm's way on something and being painted with a broad brush, because there are some really good officers, very competent officers, and very competent people that work in the department, and some that have left the department that really understand the issues very well, that we should be pulling to help us move forward.